Okay, and here we are back. So this will be the slow smoke deer shoulders part 3. As you can see, all of our kindling wood has basically burned up into nothing. We got our base coal set now. Our two big pieces are coaled up nicely. A lot of this is burned off. I got sidetracked a few minutes ago, so I let it burn a little too much. But the heat coming off of this, you wouldn't believe the heat. So again, we don't want heat and we sure don't want flame for doing the smoking. But this nice coal base that we have here, what we're going to do now as we get ready to lay our shoulders, I already just took a brush and wiped the grate off. Everything fall right off, so good way to clean the grate. So I've got a little bit of, now the problem with my pear wood here, it's kind of old. It's pretty well spalted. For you that don't know wood, that means it's about half rotten. But we're going to lay a little bit on there. I'm going to put that piece in the middle. But I will lay some, after the feed trucks get by, we're going to lay some more of our smaller oak on here. Not big pieces, fairly good size, but this. And we're going to slightly cross them just a little. We want a little bit of air in there, and as you see, that pear's already flared up. So when we lay these shoulders on, we've got to immediately quench that flame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of pear on the outsides, and that should be enough oak to last for a while, because again, we've got our base coals. Now that we've got that base on the bottom, smoke in the face, traffic comes up. That's going to heat up the wood above. That's another reason that, for starting the fire, it was kind of a aggravation with the really damp wood. But now that we got the coal base started and it's heated up and the wood's dried out, we want some damper wood on top. So again, if you're using, seasoned firewood that's been split and dried after split, what I generally do is just take a little spray bottle, just a little light mist on the wood before I put it on, and that will let it smoke instead of burn. But as you can see, we're starting to get a little bit of smoke here, so let me put my grate back on. And it's still hot. Thought it cooled off. But again, doesn't take a whole lot of wood to smoke for several hours, because again, we're covering it. It's not going to burn. We want to keep the flame off of it. We also don't want a real high temp. What I generally try to keep this at is about 200 degrees if I'm using oak, just because it's a harder wood. It won't burn at that temp. 180 degrees, 200 degrees is a good grill temp to keep everything at. We'll get into that once we get everything laid on and we start doing the regulation of the fire and the regulation of the heat. Normally, I would rinse these, but again, not my backyard. They're a little bloody. So we're just gonna lay them on here. All I did, and the reason that these are like this, is I simply cut them off the deer, put them in trash bags, wrapped them about 3 times, put them in the freezer and froze them, because I knew I was going to use these for smoking. Speaking of smoking, I can't get out of the smoke. So anyway, let me set this down and take my glove off. I just put the glove on to put the deer on there to so I didn't have to wash my hands before I go back to my French coffee. So as you see, we've got some fire coming up in the bottom. Now the fire is going to burn it, it's going to blacken it, again cook it. And you can see this was one seriously fat deer. Now as far as the meat itself, most of your deer meat, as you know, and you hear the fat's already popping. Let me get the lid on it. So as you see, there's no flame in there. So that's what I want to keep the lid, where there's no flame. Now when we get into the next part, We're going to be showing how to regulate. And I got to clean this thing. So just smoke. We want no flame, just smoke. But I will go get the other thermometer. And I like to keep, that's what your little hole in your grills are for. I don't know if this was the economy version or if they just didn't put the thermometer on it. My buddy gave it to me and he might have just left the thermometer off, but that's what your little hole there's for. So I just stick my thermometer in the hole. Again, you can put it in your vent holes here, but I like to keep my temp around 200. But as you can see, we're getting some good smoke. Let's take the top off. Okay, see, all flame is extinguished. And that's the reason for putting the lid on, is to quench the flame. So for a little while, I'm going to leave this top vent pretty much open. That's going to let it draw air. That's going to heat up the fresh wood that I just put on it. Now this is the parts where you have to kind of keep a check on it. Anytime you take that lid off, you're probably going to start getting flare-ups. Especially when this fat starts dripping down on the wood, you take the lid off, there's so much heat under it, it's going to flare. But the purpose for leaving the lid on and the purpose for adjusting our vent hole up here, one, it keeps the smoke in, two, it keeps the flame quenched, and therefore we're slow smoking over heat and not grilling. So okay, no seasoning, no nothing, slap them on there. And see, there's so much heat from that little bit of oak that was left in there, it's already starting to boil the blood out of the bones. So we're just going to let that sit there and smoke for a while. And when we come back as far as showing the regulations, that'll be the next part. All right.